Today we are making pepper jelly. You're going to need some canning supplies. You're going to need some Sure gel and peppers, hot peppers and bell peppers. You're going to need a big old pot. I'm going to go over the recipe with you. Some vinegar and sugar, and of course, custom labels. Let's get started. Basic canning equipment. You're going to need a big pot. This is my tamale pot, so it's a huge pot and it's going to be filled with water. Going to be sterilizing and sealing the jars. Going to need some jars with lids and rings. Really super important, you're going to need these pair of tongs to lift the jars out of the hot water. Do not skimp on this one tool. Everything else kind of just can make it up. You're going to need another pot to put the jelly in. Measuring cups. Going to need a ladle, a couple of different cutting boards and knives. You really don't want to mix up your hot peppers with your bell peppers when you're cutting them, and some scrapers to get all of the goodness out. Finally, this little device here is a lifesaver. It's the funnel that you put on your pepper jelly jar. Today we're making habanero pepper jelly. And because habaneros are this lovely orange color, decided to go with just orange bell peppers because it's going to be super beautiful. I'm making 2 batches today. I'm going to need probably 4 cups of bell peppers per batch. So I've got about 8 bell peppers. You're going to need a cup of apple cider vinegar per batch, so I've got 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. Sugar. So you're going to want, anywhere from 4 to 5 cups of sugar per batch, and Sure gel. If you're using, like I use a little bit less sugar, you're going to want the low sugar Sure gel pectin. Otherwise, you might have really runny jelly.
Habaneros are extremely potent peppers. So I'm wearing 2 gloves on this hand. I'm not going to touch the pepper with my right hand. I'm only going to touch the knife. Do not play with peppers without gloves, because when you touch your eye, you will get a really, really hot surprise. So, gloves, an absolute necessity. So, what I do is I take out all the seeds and the integument tissue, which can be bitter as opposed to spicy, and has no place in our pepper jelly. Slice about 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch wide strips. When that's accomplished, I line them all up and I dice. Slice and dice. So there we go. Pepper number 1. We're going to get a double batch today. So a double batch would make 1 whole cup. That'll do it. So there you go.
2 cups apple cider vinegar. That's the first thing in the pot. So ready for bell peppers. The vinegar was the first thing in the pot. Now all of the orange bell pepper is in the pot. and Lorenzo finished chopping up all of the lovely habanero pectin. My Nana said she likes Sure Gel better than anything. And now that I've made a few batches of jelly, I can confirm that Nana was right. Sure Gel is my favorite pectin. They do not pay me, although they should, and stir it up. I'm ready to cook, but I'm not going to cook until everything else is set. I got my sugar in a big old container, and I've got 4 cups of sugar per batch. I'm doing 2 batches, and I've got my jars set up with my lids. Everything is sterilized, my counters cover. I am ready to cook. Cooking at high heat. I'm stirring occasionally, but you don't need to be constantly stirring. And while it's cooking, you're going to notice that when the steam starts rising, if you've got your head over the pot, you're going to choke yourself with some really acrid fumes. So, rolling boil. Time to add the sugar. I've got 4 cups of sugar per batch, which means that I'm pouring 8 cups of sugar into this big old pot, stirring as I go, trying to keep my head out of the steam so I don't choke myself. So it probably took maybe 5 minutes from the time that I put the peppers and vinegar with pectin on the stove before it came into a rolling boil. And now I've dumped in all the sugar, and that's all of the ingredients. And now it's just doing a little more cooking until I come back to a full rolling boil. And that rolling boil that you cannot knock down with stirring. We're ready to jar. You get your ladle and you scoop from the top and get a good amount of content. Good. So we're just putting 1 ladle at a time into the jars. This way that all of that peppers is going to be distributed more evenly throughout your batch. So we're just finishing up. And what, quarter-inch, okay, quarter-inch from the top, the edge of the jar. Perfect. So the last little bit goes in the refrigerator jar, which means that we get to taste now rather than later. And there we go. There's a double batch ready for lids, ready to go into the water bath. Run it. Sealing up the jars. You want a really tight seal on those jars. And you always want to use new lids. The screw tops can be reused. The jars can be reused. But for a really good seal, use a new lid each time, and that way you're more ensured that your product is going to preserve and last in the cupboard for months and months and be lovely gifts for your friends and neighbors. After all your jars are sealed, do one more final test, every single jar. And they're in the bath for 10 more minutes. All the jars come out. There's where these tongs are really important. The water is super hot